Okay, welcome to the October 19th meeting of the LGCCA. And if you'll stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First thing, we have a period for public comments. Is there anybody in the vast public audience that wants to make a comment? Moving along, you have the agenda before you. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Before you, set of minutes taken by the city of Hendersonville at the July 20th meeting. Are there any changes, corrections to the minutes? I'm sure you all spent last night studying these very carefully.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes of July 20th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They seem to pass unanimously. Are there any items of old business that are not listed on the agenda, so we'll move along? Jake Johnson was going to join us, and my hearing and my eyesight is not as good as it used to be, but I don't think I see him out here, nor do I hear him. So we'll move along. Public access television, City of Hendersonville.
Yes, sir. I'm going to pass two of these fun and exciting packets to each.
Let me just pass them down.
Okay,
Roger,
here we go. There's two for each municipality and two for the county.
Oh, two for each.
Yeah, two for each.
Thank you.
You don't have to open it up. I'll tell you what's in it. And so you can look at it later. Sorry. Is this? Yeah, it's on. Good afternoon, Paul. Thank you for waiting. So this packet here, I know that the municipalities have received a presentation about what's called a PEG television station or public access television, and I've discussed it with some of you that are here in private. The purpose of my comments today are this. So there's a big question as to whether or not ARP funds can be used for that. I think we all agree with that. But my purpose in having this on here today is before we can even get to having a public access channel, we need an interlocal agreement between the municipalities and the county so that there is an organization in place to accept the funding. So my purpose in bringing this up is I think the PEG channel or public access channel would be very helpful for Henderson County. Even if you agree to be in the interlocal agreement, it does not mean that you are committing funds to this, okay? It's simply that for this organization to be able to go out and raise money, for the channel to be able to go out and raise money, we have to have a structure. And the structure that the state recognizes is an interlocal agreement between the municipalities and the county. This agreement basically allows that organization to access the funds, which I think you guys are aware of, that are funds that we pay through our cable fees, and that's all the municipality has to do is be in the agreement. So I would like to take any questions, but also like to advocate that we enter into such agreement so that Mr. McDonald and his folks can begin the process of raising money to create this channel. As a reminder, a public access channel, each municipality in North Carolina and each county in North Carolina is automatically given a legal term. Don't have a legal term. Piece of the pie, because they're a municipality or a county, by simply being involved. So the more municipalities and counties are involved, the more bit of the pie our channel could get. That is not funding that's taken away from us. It's funding we currently don't, well, we do currently access through our government channel that we have now, but we can access more of that by having an agreement between us all that allows the channel to access more funds. It is not requiring us to commit any funds from our municipal or county budgets, but the more of us that are involved, the more funds they can access from the state. So what I'd like to encourage everyone is to, so in your packet are some examples of interlocal agreements that exist in North Carolina. And you can see the municipalities at the very top of each that are involved in this and what an interlocal agreement does. It basically makes us sort of I won't say board of directors, that's the right term, but it makes it clear that we've all agreed to have a channel and allows them to access funds. The funding of the channel is a whole different ball of wax. And I didn't realize right now, as far as ARP funds, it's not clear, or we're not sure, or we're sure we can't use those funds. But a channel like this obviously is going to go out and try to raise its own funds. And so having this interlocal agreement allows them to be able to do that. Without an interlocal agreement, the channel cannot exist, period, even if it had money. Bruce, how'd that do?
Very good.
Okay. So, any questions or comments?
Question?
Yes, sir. Ma'am.
No, that's okay. I think you mentioned this, but I just wanted to clarify. Any municipality entering an interlocal agreement essentially is agreeing that this channel is something that we would like, but doesn't commit us to any specific dollar amount. But it does say that we are agreeing that this is something that would benefit our community.
That's correct. This does not commit you, unless you put it in there, but that's not in these. This does not commit you to any funding requirements.
No, but it does say that we have agreed that we think that this is
Yes.
something we can have.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Two questions on behalf of Mills River is that I don't know that we have that many cable subscribers in Mills. So I'd like to see that number, the number of subscribers in Mills River, and the percentage of the households versus some kind of ratio. Is that, does 10% have cable? Now, the other point I want to make is that we've been through this before. Is that we tackled this probably 15 years ago, and it didn't go anywhere. So I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to bring this to my board until I see some hard numbers.
What numbers do you need?
Back to my first point, is that, it's like at my house, I had cable, it got too expensive. I went to Dish, and now we were with Direct. So, Roger, is that, I couldn't even see this channel.
Yeah, you could, because it'd be online as well.
Well, I said, in my old age, I don't do the online stuff.
Okay, but
But is that I'd still like to see a percentage of the Mills River households that has cable versus, forget about the money thing,
sure.
before I commit anything, time, effort, money, whatever, to this project. Back to my second point is that I was on that steering committee initially, and we couldn't get no support. So I guess that's two strikes as far as Roger is concerned. Thank you.
May I respond?
Please do. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So if if you could access this channel on DirecTV or any other type of service, you'd be okay with that? Like if it's not just cable, but it can be accessed on DirecTV or some other streaming service, that would be okay with you?
I would be more inclined.
Okay. All right. The second one, though, I'm not really sure how to respond to that, we got nowhere. Was that in trying to raise interest or money?
Both. Is that,
All right.
is that, I've probably been here longer than the rest of us, but there was, is that, we were, okay. So is that we worked on getting a PEG channel for probably a year. There was actually a subcommittee of the local government of this body that looked into this. And John Crook was the guy that was over this. And we could not get anywhere with it. So after, is it, I'm gonna say a year, we just dropped it. And so I see this as a circle coming right back around.
Okay, thanks, sir. Any other questions or comments?
If I may, just in response to that, I would offer two things, and that is the old adage, if at first you don't succeed. And the second thing I would add is, as it relates to effort on any municipality's part, the agreement that's being discussed doesn't put any effort on any municipality's part. It's simply an effort to give the organization that has come forward to make this happen the power to move forward to do the work. So there's no work on us. The work is on the group that's already formed to try to make this thing move forward.
Thank you. Is that, I agree with you. The only thing is that if Mills River's not interested, then I don't see us putting forth or joining, putting forth, whatever you want to call it, to join. And so, is that, I'm not speaking for my other council members, is that I think that they would have the same question that I would, is that, okay, is that if we're gonna spend time and effort on this, what impact is it gonna have on our citizens? So,
I think the time and effort that you'll have to spend will be on the consent agenda at a meeting. I'm just telling you, it'll be on the consent agenda, you agree to it, that's it, for this part here.
Does the interlocal agreement need, is it required that the intergovernmental agreement include the county and all municipalities within the county?
No.
So the question, who chooses the programming and would we have any input into those choices?
So the station will have a station manager, and they're in charge of quote unquote the programming. So certainly you would have input, and obviously the goal of this is that all the municipalities and the county would have programming. You know, it's a very easy place to put meetings and things like that. So I guess the answer is yes. I think with regard to, I don't know if you're going deeper in like controlling what goes on and what doesn't go on the channel.
No, I'm thinking more along the lines, would there be additional types of programs like, let's just say Sesame Street, something like that? You know, something that's not related directly to the.
That's the whole goal.
Yeah.
The whole goal is that some local group has some idea that they would like to put together programming. They go to the station, they use the studio, and they put together programming. That's the whole idea behind it.
So I could find my inner dramatic
You got it.
source
Yes,
and let it come out.
that's right. Quite honestly, it's very much a First Amendment thing. So the rules with regard to programming in the First Amendment apply to this station like it would any other station. The goal is not to be all government stuff. The goal would be if we were trying to promote the Apple Festival and they wanted to put together a piece about that on there.
Could the Flat Rock Playhouse present their productions on this channel?
They want you to buy tickets.
Bruce, would that,
I'm sorry?
she asked if the Flat Rock Playhouse, I'm assuming that's yes. If they wanted to put a play on the channel,
Sure, I don't see why not.
yeah.
That would be something they'd have to work out in terms
Yeah,
of, they pay for all that.
Hypothetical, you know, maybe somebody would sponsor that. So,
But the point is, it is a channel that allows for all of those options.
okay.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, what the mayor said, that is, our agreement simply creates a entity that allows them to move forward. That's all of our work. And then with regard to making it happen, that's the organization's work. But they can't access the money without us agreeing to be in a local agreement.
So what benefit do we get if we decided to sign on, other than just being supportive of the effort?
Well, if it happens, if we get a channel, and you had some type of programming, or anyone that lived in your municipality had some type of programming, they can use the facilities and create programming. And guess what? Even if you didn't sign on, they can still use it, quite honestly. I don't think they're gonna hold up some, Mills River people, sorry, you can't come. You know, they're not gonna say that, right? That's not fair. Well, I'm sorry, Roger, excuse me.
And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but this also provides for Flat Rock, as an example, to have its own channel. It's not necessarily just one channel. Flat Rock can have a channel, Henderson County can have a channel, the town of Fletcher can have a channel.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you.
But I'll admit, I think his goal is to have it available to all of us so that the programming would be hard, yeah, but that's correct, yes. That's why you get funding. The idea is to pull the funding so we got two channels that work. Apologize for the Mills River table, excuse me.
Well, and if that's the case, it would be interesting to see, back to Roger's point, the percentage of citizens or homes that this would reach, because this would make it, you know, this would be way above and beyond Zoom or just doing a presentation. Of course, it wouldn't be two-way, but if you just wanted to present something, this would be a great avenue to do that.
Other comments? I might say that although I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but my understanding is that Blue Ridge Community College has a first-class production studio. When Mr. McDonald came to talk to Flat Rock, we mentioned that. That's as far as we got. How do we proceed from here?
I think the way we proceed from here will be, Mr. McDonald, can we someone who needs to draft an interlocal agreement and present it to the municipalities and the counties?
We could do that. I think that if the county manager and then the municipal managers could get together at some point and start the discussion, that would be a good way to do it.
With regard to the discussion, what would that discussion be about?
Well, I'd like everyone to read the two interlocal agreements that they have in the folders. Those are two very successful stations, one in East Wake County and one in Dare County. And you certainly could also go on their websites and see what kind of programming they have. So I'd start with those agreements, since there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And then we would change it as necessary for our own particular circumstances here in Henderson County.
May I make a suggestion? If you would be willing to draft one that you could give to the city managers and let them read over it, so we have something to start with?
Well, in that regard, I would say that when I moved here in 2017, I took retired status for my law license.
Okay.
But seeing that maybe I'd be involved in some legal drafting in the future, I'm reinstating that license. So that's going to happen in a month or two. So sure, I'd be glad to be involved in discussion. Any way you want me to be involved.
I just think that if there were an agreement in place that we then took and picked apart, whether we liked or disliked it, would be a lot easier than saying we don't have an agreement, let's draft it.
That
So
would be a huge step forward if we could get that agreement in place.
Right, so in my opinion, the thing that's going to be, that I know the city manager will appreciate is, hand me a document and ask me to read it, not, let's all get together and make a document.
Sure.
That's gonna be way too much work.
Well, I'll work on something, an initial draft, and then circulate it and see where that goes.
Yes.
Well, if I may, is there an issue with taking the document that you've already presented to us, and changing the names? If this is a general document that would apply to any governing
I
body?
think perhaps taking the best from both of them and combining that, and then circulating it and see how people react to it. But no, we already have most of the work already done.
We just need to have somebody's name attached to that action. Who's
Well,
that
and
gonna be?
I'll work with Bruce to see if that gets done.
Okay. How do you spell Smith?
LMFP.
Well, if you were old school English, S-M-Y-T-H, but I'm the immigrant Smith, so I'm S-M-I-T-H. Yes.
She had a little bit of an accent. Okay. Any other comments, anything from the audience to Mr. McDonald or Mr. Smith? Okay, moving along. In the interim, Representative Johnson has joined us, but I think because the mayor of Hendersonville has to leave, let's go ahead with item C, and then I'll see if we can ask the representative to come up. So, Mayor Vogt, or whoever.
Jerry's leading this.
What is this, a one-person show?
Yep. He missed a couple meetings, so he's making up for it.
You got to sign all of it.
No, I chose. I have more copies for anyone that might want.
I'll leave one.
Here we go. Just set them over there. Bar. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jerry Smith from the city of Hendersonville. I have another idea that I asked to put on the agenda today. I also want to point out we have Ashley McCoy with us today. She is the head of housing assistance, and she will be assisting me with this presentation as well. So, what you have in front of you is a one-page, front and back, description of an idea that I've been in contact with Ashlyn about. And the concept is to create a housing fund, or excuse me, affordable housing fund that the Housing Assistance Corporation would manage. On the front here are some statistics, and we included these statistics really because there was a very interesting article that came out in the Times News. I guess it came out Sunday, maybe online Monday, maybe Saturday and Sunday, discussing housing projects in Henderson County. So the statistics in front of you are from a housing study that has just been released called the Bowen Housing Study of Western North Carolina. And it has demographic information about housing in Henderson County. So the first bullet there, it just tells you households, median household income. The next one talks about sectors and particular housing needs in Henderson County. The third bullet is particularly important. And when we look at housing needs and what people pay for housing, the term cost burden is what is used. And so these are the percentage of households that are paying over 30% of their gross income towards housing. And as you can see, a very large number for renters. Okay, and that's sort of the standard that is used in the world of affordable and workforce housing is 30%. If you're spending more than 30% of your income on housing, then technically we say that housing is not affordable. All right? Going to the next bullet point there, we're looking at the housing gap, and certainly we are moving towards filling that, especially in the city of Hendersonville for some of the projects that we have approved. But the reason I'm here with you today is not just housing, but in particular, getting that price point that makes it affordable / workforce housing. As you continue to move down, so you can see under the fourth bullet point, we're about 3,200, maybe almost 3,300 units short of what we need based upon the households and our population's needs. And then as you move down and you look at vacancy rates for multifamily rental housing, you can see that it is, well, there's just nothing available that's available, okay? And you can see 453 households are on a waiting list. Next, as you go down to median market rates, you can see that is what it costs to rent those. And for people who are making below the median household income, that's a lot of rent to pay every month. That's going to exceed your 30% threshold. And certainly when you go to the last bullet point, you can see, and when it comes to housing, that we don't have enough units available, and certainly the median household list price is much higher than what would be affordable housing. Okay, so if you would turn the page. I know you're thinking, wow, look at that beautiful graph there and everything. It's great. So what we are proposing today is we know that we are building more housing. We know that people are going to live in that housing. But we also know, and the statistics show, that your teachers, or I'll say your first year teachers, your entry-level firefighters, entry-level police officers, your person that has just been hired to manage a business for the first time, they're going to have trouble finding housing and living in Henderson County at the rate of only being, or we only want them to have to pay 30% of their income, because that little bubble there is not something that is going to be covered by the market, private markets, okay? So I'm gonna give you a great example of one of these type of developments that just happened to be on the city council radar recently, and that's a development called Akawaha Village, or Strict Garden Lane, which is off North Main. And we have a development that's going right next door to it, but I have learned in the discussion of that development that on Strict Garden Lane, there's a city employee, there's a firefighter, there are 3 teachers that live there. So that is a development that housing assistance help build that falls within that affordable/workforce housing for people who are entry-level professionals in those areas. So we're not talking about, and I'm not criticizing, we're not talking about the lowest level of income bracket, and we're not talking about the highest level. Though certainly there are needs at the lowest level of the income bracket. We're talking about those people that are sort of in between. Then we use the larger phrase affordable, but we include workforce housing in that. So what we're proposing today is that we create a fund that is designated to meet that small bubble in the middle, so that teachers can work in Henderson County and live in Henderson County. Firefighters can work in Henderson County and live in Henderson County. And so on the back there, what we presented for you is what's called the Affordable Housing Fund, okay? And as it says there, fact number 1, whenever housing assistance goes out to create a new development, they compete with purchasing the land with all private developers, okay? So as you can see from the second bullet point there, when they write loans and they write grants, all of this takes time and effort, and it makes it harder for them to compete to acquire land, okay? So if you look at the third bullet there, it limits what housing assistance can do as far as meeting this bubble. So the proposal is for Henderson County, along with the municipalities in Henderson County, to join together to create a fund to which we will make annual contributions. Housing assistance will manage this fund, and the purpose is to meet this workforce affordable housing bubble in the middle that needs to be met, that is not going to be met by private developers, at least under the current setup, because tax credits are only available for the lowest rung of affordable housing. The folks in the middle, there are no tax credits to promote development in that area. As it says there, I apologize, on the proposal, the last part says to assist residents who earn up to 120% of the median area income, which is the statistic that's on the front. The advantage of this fund is, number 1, it allows Ashland to have capital ready to act when she sees an opportunity to move forward with the development. Number 2, it allows for future planning, not just, oh, we got the money now, let's build something. And number 3, it allows her to take the annual revenue from the various properties that they manage now to work that with the capital to create a larger plan to meet that housing need in Henderson County. The goal is to raise $400,000 to start the funds, and to have an annual contribution collectively from us meaning the county and the municipalities, of $100,000, so that fund is a rolling fund that allows her allows the organization, to continue to look for opportunities to build this type of housing. First rule of teaching is me talking is the least effective way of learning. So I'm ready to engage and see what questions you may have on this idea, your thoughts.
Are there questions, comments?
Well, this is just a comment, because I've had conversations about this myself. I think it's important to note that these would not be houses that are given away. These are houses that are sold.
Yes.
But at an affordable price. And I believe they help with mortgaging, getting them in contact with mortgage companies that will deal with the person, and the whole assistance program. I don't believe it includes rentable housing, or maybe she can speak to that.
I'm actually.
Go to the microphone,
Yeah.
please.
I'm actually McCoy. I'm the executive director for housing assistance. It's nice to see you all on a daily basis. So, You're exactly right. So our home ownership program, we actually have housing counselors on staff who help our clients, if they walk in the door and say, okay, I'm ready to be a homeowner, how does that happen? We help them basically act as a liaison for USDA. So they receive a USDA 502 direct loan. They can go into 3 different programs. Specifically for this fund, you're talking about your self-help program in which they help build their home, or a direct purchase, or a new homes program. There's not that sweat equity component. So you're exactly right. We don't rent out single-family homes. We do have affordable multifamily housing, but that's more rental. But
The other problem I have found with it in just doing some investigation is that there is a group that's just like inches above the cutoff limit for USDA as far as their income goes. Like they make $1,000 too much to qualify. How do we help those people too, or is there a
so
way?
that new homes program that I was mentioning, that typically helps people a little over that typical 80% or kind of higher income level for that program.
I had a question in terms of home buyers down the line. So housing assistance builds some single family, and they make those available to firefighters, school teachers, the requirements. They purchase the house. Are they under any restriction when they go to sell it to keep it within a certain amount, or can the potential is for that house to increase higher than what they were able to?
Correct. So there are not any sort of affordability periods on these homes. That's a USDA requirement. That's not a housing assistance requirement. However, we do. I think the fear, and I think where you're getting at, is that we're going to build these homes and someone's going to flip it and make money. There are safeguards in place through the USDA program to keep that from happening. We don't see a lot of turnover. I actually just met somebody at Ace Hardware a couple of weeks ago that's been in their house 20 years. They were in one of our first developments. It's also important to note that what they're getting as far as a mortgage and the beautiful house they're getting and all the hard work they put in, they're not going to find that right now in our market that's going to be comparable for their price point.
Right. I wasn't thinking so much of flipping, it's just the fact is that they're getting it at a certain rate, but when they go to sell, they're under no obligation to keep it within a certain amount. I know the housing assistance built some houses over in Flat Rock, over on Mine Gap Road, and it looks wonderful. I mean, y'all do a great job. So thank you.
Other comments, questions?
Just for clarification, so with this particular program, there is no goal to include housing that is rental housing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Or
For
an
single
apartment
family,
complex that's rental?
we could use this type of fund for rentals. It's the same thing, acquiring property for that. But I see this mostly being for single family home ownership.
Other comments? Where do we go from here?
So, I think this is something that you need to discuss with your boards. I think where we go from here is probably a follow-up by Ashland, I guess, with each of the boards and seeing how they feel about doing this. One of the things I wanted to address with this, which is, so one agreement we have to be under in this fund, sort of like working with the partnership, is that this housing could go literally anywhere in the county. So we're recognizing that this is not necessarily something that will be built in Hendersonville or Flat Rock or anywhere, but with the recognition that this benefits us all, because the assumption is these folks will be able to work in Henderson County. So that we are not looking to, that would be an understanding we'd all have to have, which is by joining this, it doesn't mean that they're going to show up tomorrow with a project in your municipality. And I personally am okay with that. I know I need to talk to the council about that, but I think that's okay, because once again, the goal is to help everyone by having this available in Henderson County.
Other comments, questions?
So can I just ask you, are you guys okay with Ashland doing the follow-up with your boards and seeing?
Better than you.
We're having fun.
I am.
I love this. Okay. Okay. Ashland, is that good? Okay, great.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to use the chairman's prerogative. I didn't know I ever had a prerogative, but Representative Jake Johnson is here, and we've asked him to come and give us a little bit of insight in the legislative process in Raleigh. So Representative Johnson, you're on, Dave.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members. I'll start by saying this is great. I wasn't even aware this forum existed until I got in the state role, and this is really great to listen in on. I served as 3 years as county commissioner, one as chair, one as vice chair, down in Polk County. So I certainly missed the local government days and definitely try to stay tuned in as much as I can. So I serve all of Polk County, all of Transylvania County, and about a third, maybe a little less of Henderson County. But I mostly just wanted to touch on some high-level stuff we're working on at the state budget, and some of it may apply locally, some of it may apply to the county, some of it may not apply to either or both. But I just wanted to go through that and give everybody an idea where we are as far as timeline. And be happy to field any questions I can answer, but then also follow back up if there's something I don't know off the top of my head. Mr. Chairman, are you okay if I just run through some budget items and the money we're looking at in the House version?
Go ahead.
Perfect. Well, I serve as chair of the IT Appropriations Committee and vice chair of the overall appropriations. And it's been a busy year because not only are we working on our state dollars that we would normally be spending, but now we've had this influx of federal dollars. But with that, there's certain things you can and can't spend it on, and it's been a little bit long process to navigate. We've been in session since January. We heard we'd be out by July, then it got moved to August, and now I'm starting to see Halloween candy put outside the offices. So I think that tells me I'm going to be there till the end of October at least. So as far as the IT tech budget that I handle the majority of, the big thing is obviously broadband build out in rural areas. I think that's something we can all get on board with. It's a relatively nonpartisan issue. It's something that is probably the number one thing I hear from constituents across the district. To give a scale of what we're looking at as far as an investment, previously the amount was $150 million over 10 years, break that down to about $15 million a year. The proposal we put forward is $750 million, just as quick as we can get it out to rural areas. And that's leveraged with private dollars for over $1 billion. That's by far the most vast investment we've ever seen in North Carolina. That's working with private entities, that's partnering with counties and nonprofits, or any government organization that can partner and help us do it. We've got a $100 million Make Ready Accelerator program. That's actually working with our co-ops to reach the most rural areas. If you think about where co-ops serve in our state, it's historically your very rural areas. So that $100 million would go to pole replacement, and with that pole replacement, we can actually run fiber along the poles and get to those most hard to reach last mile rural areas. $60 million for digital literacy. This was a big thing in the governor's priorities that we try to work with his office on. And I think we're getting there pretty quick. $20 million recurring, $10 million each year recurring for cybersecurity and risk management. Obviously, we've seen in the past local governments get hit with cyber attacks and held for ransom. We really wanted to beef up our infrastructure at the state level. So if a local government were to get hit with a ransomware attack, your municipality is just not equipped to deal with a state-sponsored or individual-sponsored cyber attack. There's no reason it would be. So working with municipalities to avert the risk and then deal with those cyber attacks when they happen is a big part of what we're trying to do. And another thing I would say is Tier 3 counties, which all of Henderson County is Tier 3, we were going to get pretty much cut out of this funding because it was for Tier 1 and 2 counties with this broadband build out. And we were able to get a provision put in there, and this is something I was running as a standalone bill and actually was able to get it put in the budget, that we will be able to use this rural broadband money as long as we're using it in rural areas of a Tier 3 county. So that allows a county like Henderson to still be able to build out with this rural broadband money, even though it is Tier 3. Bouncing around to education, 9% overall school funding increase by 22-23. So by year 23, 5.5% pay raises for teachers, 15% minimum for non-certified staff. $10 million for school safety, $35 million for the NC Promise program, and $12 million for apprenticeship opportunities in high demand fields. Those are those trade skills with jobs we really need filled. Bouncing down to public safety, $26 million for law enforcement equipment, $1 million for scholarships for people wanting to enter the law enforcement field in rural areas like ours, $16 million to upfit the e-court system, $8 million for rural emergency management, $10 million to clear the rape kit backlog, $27 million for pretrial domestic violence defendant monitoring. Salaries, most state employees will be looking at a 5% pay raise, 7% for correction officers. They've been left out in the past. 2,000 increase for eligible direct care workers who worked in the pandemic. 2,000 bonuses, $2,000 bonuses for state employees making less than $75,000 a year. 8-week paid leave for new mothers employed by the public school system. And a big one that we were asked for this time, the restored master's pay for those seeking higher degrees. For agriculture and economic resources, $97 million for farmers and other food producers who took losses during the COVID-19. $5 million for Forest Service response equipment, $37.5 million for farmland restoration, $178 million for rural economic development, and $1.6 billion for stormwater and water and sewer, stormwater management, water and sewer. That's down to HHS, $118 million for child welfare, case management, $103 million for child care services. That's a big one when we're talking about workforce development and what we can do to get more people eligible to get back in the workforce is that child care development and the child care support. And another thing that it was covered in the news actually really well was the visitation rights for family members during times of emergency, like we've just seen, being able to go visit those family members when they're in the hospital and hospice is being called in. Capital investments, $288 million. Reduction and avoidance of paying down state debts, $200 million for community colleges, $20 million for historic sites, $184 million for parks and recreation, $56.8 million for dam repairs, most of those high risk, and $58.7 million for our hospitals. I'm going to run through two more quick ones and then hit the tax policy. We have a very high retired veterans population here, as I'm sure everyone knows, and we made a big push in the House to eliminate the income tax on veterans' federal benefits at the state level, and that's something that we passed out of the House and are fighting for to get in the final budget, and we're going to keep trying to do that. Over $2 million in scholarships to children of disabled veterans, provide in-state tuition for veterans and families who are deployed and in and out of the state. DOT, we put some additional oversight language in 19. And had to kind of get things straightened out. We had an overspend at DOT of $700 million. So we had to go put some restrictions on their spending and some oversight there. Doing the online renewals for DMV for licensing and permits, and a total of $16.8 billion for road maintenance. Finally, we get to the finance side. We're very proud that we're going to be able to, looks like, to lower the income tax, at least in the House version, from 5.25 to 4.99. Reduce the standard deduction income rate, and reduce the tax burden on businesses who accepted the PPP loans, still allow them to deduct that out of the back end. I think there's only one or two states that haven't done it, so we really need to get that aligned with the federal guidelines. But that's just a very, very quick 30,000-foot overview of what's been a long process and what I think will be a very good budget. People that have been slightly critical in the past have actually reached out and said they're very, very happy with the version that the House has put forward, and we've negotiated what I think is a good version from the Senate, and talking to the governor's staff, they feel like they're in a very optimistic place too. So I'm very confident about what we've got going on. It's been a productive year, and now we're in the middle of redistricting and wrapping up this budget, and hope to have it done by the end of October. But I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Questions?
Comments,
Yes, sir.
please.
Yes, sir.
Is that, did you mention about retired state employees?
And that is, let me make a note of that.
I might have missed it.
It would be, it may be in the salary section. I think it's still being negotiated out, if I had to guess. There was a things that got flagged between the two budgets, and they're still in negotiation.
I don't think that they've had a pay raise in.
And you're talking about the COLA, the cost of living, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get that COLA number. I do know, it's gonna be 5%, what was in the House version for state employees, it's 5%, and then there's a
Retirement.
We're retired, so that would be the cost of living. I'll get that and follow up with you, what we're at right now with that number.
The other question, a volunteer fireman, not a paid fireman, is that, we're talking about teachers and firemen. Did you know that a volunteer fireman gets paid $175 every month? That it's not increased in the last 15 years.
And you said that's volunteer firefighter, is it?
Is that, it's a volunteer fire, not a paid fire. But is that, this one is close to home.
That's not known by name.
So is that, I was a volunteer fireman for 25 years. So I paid in to the pension plan with the state. And so, I guess maybe 2 years ago, is that on the 25th of every month, I get $175. I got to checking, it's been that same amount for like 15 years.
Do you know off the top of your head how that's categorized, if it's a stipend or how it's categorized, just so when I'm looking it up?
Well, is that, what you do is that you pay in per month. Now, is that, I'm trying to think back, you pay into it for 10 months, or for 10 years, per, I think it's like $10, $15 a month. So after you reach the age 55, or 20 years of service, then you make application to the state treasurer's office, and then they'll start sending you a check. So it's kind of like a 401k, you know, in a little weird fashion. And so like I said, is that we got the checking on it, and that $175 has been the same for 14, 15 years. So is there anything in the budget that will increase that $175?
So if I'm understanding it right, it's money you've already paid in,
Yes.
more or less an annuity or 401k, like you said, you're paying it in,
Right.
and then that's paying out at the set amount.
Yes.
And you're wondering if there's any variation in the amount that would be paid out.
Yes.
Okay, I can look that up, and
Okay.
is it Roger
Yes.
Schneider? Roger Schneider.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
He's unique among us.
We are.
I had a question.
Other questions, comments?
I had a question. This isn't on a budget question, so I hope but I know that the governor just signed an energy bill that seemed to be a bipartisan energy bill. Does that affect Western North Carolina at all, or in what way would that affect us?
So there was, this is a very complex energy, I mean, this is the first time we've had energy reform in this state in a really long time, and it seems like no one's completely happy, which kind of is the definition of compromise, I guess, that no one's overly happy. There's some people that if it has the word solar in it, they're not gonna vote for it, and some were unhappy that it didn't have more solar in it. But the reality we saw on the front end was marginally it was getting more expensive to produce some of the types of energy that our state banks on. So we knew long term we were gonna have to do something different. I don't know what the numbers we were given, it was very incremental amount. It wasn't some of the projections I heard were $50 more a month in crazy amounts. That's not what we're anticipating at all. I mean, marginally, we know energy's getting more expensive to produce anyway, and until we find better ways to store the energy we have, and we've got more people on it, and we've got more people moving here, it's putting more pressure on our grid. I can get the most up-to-date estimates on that and get back to you. I would assume over time, I just don't see the huge increase, in all the projections I've seen. And I saw one article the other day, it was like 5 times, as high. And I don't know where those numbers are coming from. The numbers I saw were very, very marginal, and I'm not even sure they're more than the amount would have naturally went without any type of legislation being passed. But what we do know is on the front end, coal is becoming much more expensive to produce, and we certainly don't want to phase those out prior to the market demanding it. But we also don't want to hold something that's, puts us at a competitive disadvantage. We'll put it that way, require that something's being produced that we could, do something, less expensive. So I think this is a good balance of phasing in, good renewable energy, but doing it in a market approach way. And I think there was some hesitation on both sides, but I saw the governor did sign it. So, I think overall it's a really good thing, but I'll get details on the latest projections we have of what that will do over time.
Thank you.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the vice mayor's question was, is there an impact to western North Carolina from the legislature? So do you know the answer to that?
As far as reliability cost or?
Well, reliability and also whether our residents will see a significant increase, and from what you said, it doesn't seem as though there would be a significant increase for energy, but.
And I just don't see that being the case. I really don't, just as incrementally as it's being phased out. Now, if we passed a bill that, some suggested said we shut all coal down tomorrow, yes, I think you would see a huge increase, but the way we're phasing things out, and I just don't see a huge cost increase or pressure to affect reliability. No, I don't see any negative impacts.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Johnson, thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate your presence. We
Yeah.
meet quarterly. I'll make sure your secretary is aware of the dates, and you can come back.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me, and kind of being back and forth. The best way to reach me, if anyone has a question or follow-up, please reach out to me via email, and we will tie staff into that and get everybody plugged in. But thank you all so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, moving along, ARP Fund Committee, Henderson County.
Yeah, we've met 3 times. You missed one.
I missed one, you missed 2.
Fletcher didn't come.
You missed a whole lot.
Been very productive. We have had some information on, where we stand as far as the regulations go. We've had visitors come and present to us, and that was NC Pro, came, and our last one, Ann was there. Familiar faces, Annie, it's just doing it. So if I fudge. One of the things that we found was a joint initiative was broadband. So we have had presentations from Morris Broadband and their new entity that has basically purchased them, and their plans for expansion, which are vast. So Roger, you should be fine. And what that entails, and then how we take broadband to the next level. We have our next meeting will be the November 4th, and we have another presentation from another broadband source, hopefully, if we can line that up. But that's kind of where we're focusing our attention right now. And the other thing that we found, which I think Rock brought this up, was that the accounting process is, it's government, so it's early. And the smaller municipalities don't necessarily have the staff to handle all of the accounting that will be required. So we have discussed maybe hiring somebody that can do that for us all. And even amongst ourselves, talking about it from the county perspective, if it gets to the point where we think it will get, it could overload the county as well. So we will be discussing that as well. But to date, we don't have the final rule. So we're still not there yet. But setting this up was a good idea. I think that was really, yeah, that's brownie points.
Any questions on ARP? Or maybe are there any answers on ARP?
Not
Have you heard? No.
Not final.
No, no. And every time I go and attend a Zoom conference, it becomes more complex. The most recent complexity was the fact that state law has to come into play along with the federal guidelines and so forth. And it's, you just wonder, we're gonna have all this money and not be able to spend it. Wonderful. Moving along to VFW.
Okay, for the VFW, we have hired an architect. We hope to have some preliminary information or suggestions back from them in November at our mid-month meeting. They met with our board and we provided input from our perspective about the direction we would like to see it go. But we're getting input from other groups. The VFW 5206 has been invited to provide input as well. So my hope, now this is just my perspective, is I am looking at completing the top floor where the good dance floor is, but making that available as the lower floor is completed as far as renovation goes, because we have a lot of groups that need a place to meet, and that location will hold a good number of people. So I hope that that's something that we can work out, but that's just the way I hope it goes. But we will know more mid-November. But we see this as an opportunity to provide a place for anybody in the county to come and have meetings like civic clubs. The VFW will be given a space that they can use whenever they need it. And we hope to offer some different services there. But there's a longer list of things that we want to offer through it. So we're still preliminary, but it's moving on.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman, I might just add too, just for the benefit of the community, that there were a great deal of what I would call community treasures in that location. The biggest of which is probably a flag that was flown over Pearl Harbor on the day of the attack. But I would say out loud to folks in the community that we did secure those items at the library. So we hope, we know, as a matter of fact, we've committed that they'll be back up and ready for view in whatever form it takes at the VFW.
Okay, moving on. The trail.
I'm going to ask Mr. Jones to approach the bench and give us kind of a brief update about the construction portion of this. But I will say to the group that it did close in August. I suppose folks have seen that in the newspaper. There's a lot to do in regards to a trail, and we appreciate our partners. I'm looking at John and the mayor and others. So the things that are kind of working through at the moment, everyone has noticed that the rails and ties have come up. Marcus, I believe, has been out to where they have finished, but they're moving their way towards Brevard, and they're moving, it's coming from Brevard in this way. I would say out loud to everyone, you'll recall that part of the deal was that the ties and the rails were sold to make up for the 20% of the 80-20 federal grant. So for all citizens, if you see steel out there, that steel's not for just taking. If you take that steel or the ties, which I know are enticing, believe me, you're taking someone else's property.
You have to be pretty strong to lift them.
Well, I'll leave there where it is. At this moment, the trail is not in public ownership. It's in private ownership under Conserving Carolina. The Henderson County Board of Commissioners, as you'll see on their agenda tomorrow, are in negotiations with Conserving Carolina on behalf of our partners, the city and the town, City of Hendersonville Town Law Park, and also our other partners, Conserving Carolina and Friends of the Coastal Trail. Part of that, the board set up an advisory committee at its last meeting. That advisory committee is slated to have a representative from the City of Hendersonville, a representative from the Town Law Park, a representative from Conserving Carolina, and a representative from Friends of Augusta, and also 5 at-large members from throughout the county. The intention of that group is to provide advisory function about all things trail-related. I'm sure that there are going to be issues as regards to people who live next to the trail, the management of it, the design of it, even though I would point out that the city of Hendersonville conducted a design feasibility study some years ago, which is what the costing, I'm told by our county engineer, was used to cost out. And also the Greenway Master Plan, which kind of formed the background for what a design would look like in the future. And I'm in danger of taking everything you would say, Marcus. So Marcus is going to just briefly say where the construction is headed.
Thank you. A good place to start is with what's going on right now. The rails, truss ties are being removed. Now that is a Watco contractor, but I know and I'm in touch with that contractor, so if you have any questions or get with me and I can get with them. They've removed quite a bit. I've inspected the right-of-way, it's a good term to use, from Canuga at least to Brightwater. And so it's going to be an amazing trail. We are in the process of the project to soliciting for an engineering firm to do the design and permitting. As you know, it's DOT funds coming through, or federal funds coming through the Department of Transportation, so the grantsmanship required is pretty extensive, good and bad. DOT has been very responsive and very engaged in this project. Not only is it a big deal for Western North Carolina, I think it's a big deal throughout the whole state, getting a lot of attention. Everybody wants it to happen quickly. We sent out our solicitation for engineering firms. We've received a good response. We're compiling that information and developing a recommendation. Staff is for our commissioners, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, within the next couple of board meetings. If you know how state statutes for hiring professional services require you to make a selection based on qualifications, the board, and then we go back and negotiate a fee with that firm. DOT is involved with that too, so after a selection's been made, they review the selection and then are engaged in the development of the contract. Hopefully within a month or two, we'll have that process done and moving along to start the design phase. The stakeholders committee.
Let me just add that one of the what tugs, the polls here back and forth, is the public's desire to get on the trail and our desire to move forward with drawing down this grant money, and also the input from the advisory committee. So I'm hoping that the folks from Mall Park and Hendersonville and other partners will get on board, and if it seems like we're moving aggressively, we are, because it takes a long time to do these kind of things, a long time to draw down this kind of money.
Yeah, DOT's made the comment that we must be one of their most aggressive clients that we're working with right now, since they're made those comments. But as soon as the money is available, we were ready to move on to the design phase and spend it. So we're trying to stay right with the funding source or more.
The last thing I'll add to button this up, unless there are any questions, is that I'm still proud to report to all the citizens of the county that we have not spent any property tax out of the coffers on this initiative or sales tax either. Our partners at the Tourism Development Authority and private funders have made up the 20% and the 80% is coming out of the feds. So is there more, Marcus?
There's one more thing.
That was the best way to end it.
Well, I've met with at least 3 property owners on the trail. If you have any property owners with concerns, please send them my way. I'm begging John to get the time to go meet with them in person and find out their concerns and see if we can't be addressed in the design phase. So don't hesitate to contact me about anything we can do to we'll make sure we're good neighbors as well.
Quick question for my understanding. Initially, the property owners had the option to sell. And if they chose not to sell, it then moves to the next level where the property is taken, is that correct?
That's not correct, actually, the line is actually mostly owned in fee simple, and I believe it was purchased back in the 1880s. It's actually a very unique project in the sense that, Conserving Carolina purchased the property from a willing landowner. And it's an intact corridor all the way to downtown Brevard.
Well, when you say, and I'm speaking actually from someone actually in Brevard who raised the issue with me, and this is an issue where their private land
Right.
is part of it. And so the issue now is they didn't agree to sell the land initially. And so now they're coming for the land.
In that instance, the rail banking statute would govern, what it's intended to do is preserve a corridor so that if rail was available in the future, that they could come in and just put the rails back down. So while it is purchased in fee simple, it also carries all of the old rights so that in case of an emergency for national defense or for economic development at the end of the corridor, that it, for all intents and purposes, remains a rail corridor. So there's all kinds of legal wrangling that made that happen. That's a law from the late 80s under Ronald Reagan, and I think it was done to preserve those corridors in case of national defense or the future economic development. We, Henderson County, do not own the trail at this time. It's under ownership by Conserving Carolina. I would also point out that Henderson County, should it get a lease, that our lease would only go up to the edge of Transylvania County. There'd have to be another partner over in Transylvania County in order for that to go forward. And that's, of course, a matter for their citizens to discuss. But at this time, it is federally rail bank.
I will add, it was a joyous day, and it wasn't too long after Conserving Carolina made the agreement and we put the upfront money towards the purchase, that we did receive some funds back from the state, and we all went, but it all worked out very well.
Any other comments or questions on the trail from Laurel Park?
No, we have two board members on our council that are also board members on this committee. They keep us well informed about what's going on.
Moving along, updates, City of Hendersonville. Have you?
No update.
Because you're all that's left.
That's, I won't screw it up, no update. Jerry, you've already
We've never
started
had
it
no
out.
update. Moving along, Henderson County.
I will share, I am the commissioner of litter. We did have a litter pickup day with the City of Hendersonville. We had council members from Hendersonville, and you were excused, Jerry, but not for the next one. And commissioners and some private citizens, and we spent 2 hours picking up litter along Upward Road, and we collected 180 pounds in 2 hours. I mean, I was just amazed. But it was interesting what you can find when you walk along the road and pick up litter. Most interesting thing that was retrieved was a cell phone, and it was still on. So it was like, that must have just fallen out of a car or something. But one of our citizens who had come to volunteer when we were all gathering around at the end said, "That's my cell phone." But I would like to invite each of you, if you would like to sponsor a litter pickup day in your area and invite the commissioners to participate, we would love to do that. And we will be sponsoring another one in the spring during the NCDOT litter pickup time span. So, and then the other thing I was going to update on is the comp plan. We are in full force, full production force as far as doing surveys, gathering surveys, and doing presentations in different areas. I think we're halfway through the presentations. They went to Edneyville Community Building yesterday. And it's going along very well. People are very enthusiastic about it, and they're submitting surveys. I want to say, and I asked for the latest number, but I want to say we've received 8,000 plus surveys back. Please encourage everybody to take these surveys, because it is very important. We want to hear from everybody. And also ask them, if they will, to do the survey online. They can do it by paper and mail those in, but I spent a few hours yesterday entering paper surveys into the system. But it's interesting what you can see as you're doing that. But we're excited about it, so that's all.
Thank you. The town of Fletcher.
In the wonderful town of Fletcher, we are currently in the process of updating our town of Fletcher gateway sign in front of First Citizens Bank on the north side of town. And that sign has definitely seen better days, so we are in the process of making sure that that sign is as amazing as everything else in the town of Fletcher. On a business note, we are currently in discussions with Outrider USA, which is a Fletcher-based company that is interested in establishing a new manufacturing facility on town-owned property that is adjacent to the Miracle plant. Outrider USA is a company that currently specializes in on-road and off-road vehicles for individuals with disabilities. So they're already in Fletcher, looking to expand. And finally, for all of you trick-or-treaters, we have our trick-or-treat trail in the park. We had to transition from our normal Halloween event due to obvious reasons. But this trail was something individuals had signed up for in advance, and we're completely sold out. So we will be enjoying children. Feel free to come out and join us 12 to 3 on Saturday.
Thank you. Town of Laurel Park.
Good afternoon. I wanted to introduce Commissioner Kristen Dunn. It's her first meeting time to come to this meeting. We had, in Laurel Park, we had a surprise. Yes, I'm looking at John Mitchell right now. Unfortunately, we're losing our town manager to the county. I'm happy for the county. It's an unfortunate loss for us. However, we only went through this process about 2 years ago, and I think it'll be a whole lot easier the second time around. Since our last meeting 3 months ago, we've adopted our UDO. And that's all I have. Kristen, do you have anything? Christopher Todd is here. Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look forward to my transition from one seat in this room to another. So that's very exciting. But some other fun things going on in Laurel Park right now. For those that do not know, in 2025, Laurel Park will actually be celebrating its centennial. So we have begun the process of planning for that event right now. There is a centennial committee. Commissioner Dunn is the co-chair of that committee. So if anybody wants to participate or has interesting tidbits in history, I believe Commissioner Hanson, who's not here, is writing a book that's going to be entitled Laurel Park, the Town That Made Hendersonville Famous. So that should be a fun read in a couple of years. And then the town council has been putting a lot of energies and efforts right now into its first comprehensive stormwater and street CIP by combining those two with a look to infrastructure to keep Laurel Park maintained and functioning well into the future. But thank you. I'll be around. I'm just moving about 1.5 miles down the road. So I look forward to working with everybody in this room in a different capacity.
Thank you.
Does the town of Laurel Park get a referral to?
I don't know what happened. His house is in the middle, right, Chris? So you didn't like turning left anymore, so you decided to apply for a job so you could turn right instead.
In all fairness, my home is going to be 0.8 miles from Laurel Park Town Hall and 0.9 miles from my new office. So it is a bit more of a travel.
Thank you. Moving along, before I ask the town of Mills River, I have a personal question. How can a volunteer firefighter with a beard like that fight a fire?
Notice the key word there, retire. How about that? As far as Mills River, I'm gonna pull a Jerry, no updates.
We're gonna have a short meeting. Okay, Village of Flat Rock, election coming up. We have, 3 council members, that will be running, 2 of which will be unopposed, and only 1, position, is being challenged. So it's gonna be a lot less contentious than it was 2 years ago. We've had a series of town hall meetings, held 4 of them. Fair attendance, I would say. Topics seem to be speeding on Greenville Highway and Little River Road, the North Highland Lake Road project, and animal control or lack thereof. Also, a lot of questions about the ARP and why is it that the village council can't decide how to spend the $1.5 million that we got, or $1,050,000. Had a shred day on Saturday. That idea came from the city of Hendersonville. We plagiarized that, and I must say, that's probably one of the best public relations activities that we do in a year. ARP, I won't go through that. Everybody's in the same boat. It's a complex situation. Blue Ridge Fire and Rescue is expanding the station right next to the Village Hall and should be open in early 2022. It'll be staffed 24/7, and it's going to give us much improved response time on 911 calls. Ann, you have anything to add?
I really just had one thing to add, and it does have to do with ARP. As Commissioner McCall mentioned, a lot of the smaller municipalities are concerned about how we're going to handle all of the paperwork involved with that. So our village administrator, Pat Christie, did reach out to the Land of Sky Regional Council. Not that we can really start anything yet, but they indicated very much a willingness to help us kind of navigate that process. I think they're already working with Black Mountain in that capacity, so we look forward to kind of hearing more from them once we get the final rules. That's it.
Okay.
I just wanted to add, I believe Mayor Whiteside is not running for re-election, and this will be his last meeting. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So it's been a pleasure getting to know you, and thank you for your input to this council.
Thank you, the pleasure's been on.
Do you have a successor in mind?
I'll sit right next to him.
Okay, Chris.
know yet.
There's an election that has to be.
The next is the approval of the 2022 meeting schedule, which I could not find attached. So while Jerry was talking, I went through my cell phone and found out the dates. January the 18th will be hosted by the town of Fletcher, and Kristen, I hope you show up.
I'll be there.
Okay. Then April the 19th, I don't know who does that, July the 19th, and October 18th. So Fletcher, Henderson County, town of Laurel Park, and then the town of Mills River. So I hope you can convey that. You have a year. You have a year to do that. Okay, the next meeting is January the 18th. Town of Fletcher will be hosted. Any other topics to come before this august body?
Do we need to approve the schedule?
I'm sorry.
Do we need to approve the schedule for next year? This is approved.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The meeting schedule is approved. Anything else to come before the body? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.